that sticks. And it can be taken away, it can be deleted, it can be moved around. So basically, conceptual wise, the best way to think of Pinterest is kind of like a bulletin board, because that's realistically what it is, except that the content changes all the time. Now, this is a lot like, for those of you on Facebook or Twitter, for example, or even Google+, Pinterest has an internal flow or a feed that as new pins get added to it, anyone that you're following on Pinterest, sort of like anyone you're friends with on Facebook or you follow on Twitter or Google+, anything that gets posted is going to show up in your feed. When you look for things, there's this great little search bar up at the top, and you don't have to fill out anything in your account if you haven't started Pinterest yet in order to search for things, but nothing will really show up on your feed until you either search for things or until you start following people or businesses or accounts or boards. There's a couple of specifics I'll go through a little bit later about that. But this search term, you can type in anything. So say you're looking for gluten-free breakfast ideas. You could type in gluten breakfast or gluten breakfast recipes. And then anyone that has pinned images that are related to gluten breakfast, for example, will show up and you can scroll through those. And new ones, especially recipes, get added to all the time. So if you're looking for something new, come back and search occasionally, because there is new stuff coming up there all the time. Just to give you some statistics about Pinterest, there's 100 million users right now, and that's worldwide. That's a lot of people using this. Last year, they said that there was 23 million unique visitors per month. Now, as of the same date, a year later, it's 48 million. So it's more than doubled in terms of the unique visitors. And that's not actually counting just the users itself, but people that are going to Pinterest to actually look for ideas, to look for information. So that's pretty big. Another thing that I found really interesting that I just came across this the other day was that about 5% of the Americans use Pinterest, and they use it during work hours. So this is interesting because from the perspective of, if you're using Pinterest to advertise your in and to promote your in on it, people look for places to stay a lot of times while they're at work. So 5% is actually fairly significant in terms of that, because they might be cruising around on Pinterest and they might be B&B lovers, and your pins for whatever reason are coming up either because of rooms, because you've pinned area activities, things to do, area wildlife, for example, recipes that you're in. So there's lots of different ways that you can target that market. But that's also something to keep in mind, because the best pinning time when you yourself are actually using Pinterest is between 6 and 8 p.m. That's when Pinterest has the highest traffic volume. Saturdays, it kind of slacks off again, because I think people use Saturdays more to get things done the beginning of the weekend. Sunday all day is also a prime pinning time. So this is something to keep in mind, because if you're pinning images or you're uploading photos or pinning photos from your website, 6 to 8 p.m., which hopefully you have a little bit of downtime yourself, maybe a few minutes here and there to catch, is going to be more prime time for you than midday anyway, and you're going to be busy in the middle of the day. Now, these are some interesting statistics, because if you go back to 2011, these stats are from a site called Social Media Examiner, and if you have not been a reader of Social Media Examiner, just Google it. I would highly recommend subscribing to their email newsletter. They always have great information about all kinds of social media. The reason I use them is because every year they come up with a very comprehensive, basically a social media report card, and this goes over commonly used commonly used social media platforms, what's happening in terms of changes, in terms of trends, in terms of usage. And so if you go back to 2000 and 2012, you can see that Pinterest wasn't even on the radar. the interesting thing is Pinterest actually came out in 2011, but it really didn't start even to be aware of and pop for marketing until a couple of years later. As you can see, there's a big jump, and this is for usage for 2013, from absolutely nothing up to 41%. Now, 2014, it went up to 47%, so it did grow last year. And this is a little bit interesting because this is 2015, and usage did drop a little bit for businesses. And this is just to keep in mind that's usage, it's not actual viewers. So that's just something to keep perspective-wise, and that 2% is not huge compared to some of the other social media platforms. Now, a couple of days ago, if you had logged into Pinterest, this is what your typical feed would look like. And down here, there was a little plus and a question mark, and it says, get this browser button, and you could find some more useful things in here, especially under the question mark. Now, if you log in, if that's changed, that's gone, and you'll see this bar at the top. So just be aware of that if you're looking for some things that weren't there before. Now, this is kind of home base in terms of all of your bells and whistles for the back end of Pinterest are going to be found up here on the top right. Hopefully this stays like that for a while so it doesn't cause me too much of a further headache. Now, if you click on those, this is what'll pop up. Your home feed, your analytics, ads manager. If you're signed up as a personal account, you will not see analytics, and you shouldn't see ad manager unless they've changed this in the last day or so. You will see this if you've started as a business account or you've transitioned from a personal account to a business account, which you can do. And it will also give you some additional things, which we'll go over as well. Now, this help section is very extensive. They're always adding new things to it. What I would recommend if you are going to delve into Pinterest is go into the help section and honestly just click around and see what all of this does, because there is a lot of useful information in here. And then if you're looking for something later on, if you have a question, you'll at least know roughly where to go to find it. Now, setting up your business account, and this is where you can also transition. You can convert your personal account to a business account, and everything will be transitioned over, but you will have some additional options. And it does clarify this, that right now business and personal accounts have the same features. They've said that there might be something that's going to change in the future about that, but they've also said that since business accounts technically got rolled out, and nothing has changed other than business accounts have more options. I know when I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago on Pinterest, a question was asked, do you think Pinterest will ever charge for business accounts? Honestly, I would tend to say, I hope not, but you never know. Now, verified accounts is a little bit different. You used to be able to verify your website, and that is actually still an option, but they've changed it so verified accounts are not, you can still verify your website, but you can't verify your web account anymore. And these are some analytics that you have access to. And I bring this up specifically because I shamefully have not been very active on Pinterest at all this past month. I think I've logged in twice and pinned maybe 3 or 4 things. And this is just a good example of if you go in and you fill out and optimize your Pinterest profile and then you don't have a lot of activity on it, you're still going to be getting traffic from it. And that's significant because I know that if I go into my Google Analytics, for example, I have both connections on like photos, for example, or things that I've designed. I have links to my website on my Pinterest board and links on my blog to my Pinterest board. And both of those actually still show up in traffic in Google Analytics. And Pinterest, depending on how you use it and how often you use it, can be a very, very good search engine optimization driver to your own channels and to your own website. Now, again, this is a snapshot of who sees my pins and people act on my pins. And this is, I've got, this and 16, and that's for pretty much doing absolutely nothing on the account. If you look at an active account, it's a good way to test this once you have been, because it will go back and you can see statistics back from when you started, and you can see your engagement levels. And that's important because, like all social media channels, you need to benchmark where you're going and see whether it's worth your time. Now, there's something in here too called promoted pins. How should I approach this one? There are pros and cons to promoted pins. It is great for engagement. It's great for driving traffic to your website. Whether you're actually going to get reservations from it, at this point, honestly, I don't know, because it's more driving short-term traffic to your website, because someone might say, oh, this is this great recipe on, Swan Lake Bed and Breakfast. And so they might click through to it, but they may not at that time be wanting to book a bed and breakfast because they're in Toledo at a conference and their next vacation isn't until next March. But you are driving your brand awareness. The good thing about if you do promoted pins, it does let you edit it. It does let you have an end date. You can go in and stop it at any time, and you can set a daily budget. So if you wanted to play around with $10 or $15, for example, and just to see what it can do, track both the analytics in Pinterest and make sure that you have Google Analytics tracking specifically set up for this campaign, so you can actually compare whether it's worth the $15 or not. Now, when you do promoted pins, it's going to give you a name for your campaign, and it's also going to suggest some terms. So if you're promoting a certain page on your website, for example, and we'll take recipes as that example, you can go in and put in, it'll say recipes, and then anything that's text worthy on that page that you're going to drive traffic to, it's going to pull in search terms for there as suggested ones. So if you had, waffles and bananas and strawberries and maple syrup, it would automatically pull those terms into it for advertising perspectives, but you can also add your own. And then you can do a little bit more specific. Where do you want these promoted pins to go? What languages, what devices? You do want to make sure that you have all devices picked, and then all genders or pick specific genders. And who demographic-wise is using Pinterest? That's actually really interesting, because in the beginning, Pinterest was pretty much purely women, and between the ages of approximately 20 to 25, 60 to 65. Now, I find it really interesting that 1/3 now of all new Pinterest signups come from men, and that's up from 13% last year of all users of Pinterest, is now up to 33% of users. So the demographic is actually changing quite a bit of Pinterest. My husband, for example, thought, oh, Pinterest, that's for girls. But the interesting thing is, when he found out that there's like home improvement ideas on here, he was all over this, and then I couldn't get him off of it for a while. But that's just something to keep in mind, because the demographic is changing, and I know that there's been other Pinterest type things geared just for men, but none of them have really taken off. I think Pinterest will probably stay around for a while, and while I don't think the demographic will ever end up being 50-50, I think it might go up further from 1/3, maybe up to almost 50%, maybe 40%. Now, there's also the option of adding a pin it button. So if you have a website that you have access to, or you work well with your web designer, you can have them add a pin it button to your website, or to specific pages, or to specific images. I'll be honest, if you pay a webmaster to do this work for you, I don't think it's worth your time to do this. And the reason being, most people that actually use Pinterest have the Pin It extension browser button, and there's a couple of screenshots, and when I come across the next one, I'll show you. There's a browser extension where you just hit that button, and then any images that come up in the page will automatically get pinned to that. And there's also an extension that most people have enabled on mobile that will let people do the same thing. So if you have access to it yourself, I certainly wouldn't dissuade you from adding that. But if you're paying someone to do it, I honestly don't think it's worth the time and the money invested. Now, this is what a pin it button would look like on a standard website. There's another thing called rich pins. This is not yet rolled out for reservations or special offers. There has been scuttlebutt that they're talking about this. I hope that they do this. Right now, what's happening is rich pins have a bunch of different options. There's article pins, recipe pins, product pins, place pins. The ones that B&Bs could probably take most advantage of are the place pins and the recipe pins. And place pins, what they do is it lets you add a location to pins that come from your website. So when people pin something for your site to a place board, it'll actually show the location itself of your in. And recipe pins let you add a title, a serving size, how long it takes to cook, and then actually a list of ingredients to recipes from your site. And they can also tell if it's like paleo, if it's vegetarian, if it's vegan, or it's gluten-free. That is worth it, especially if you have something that is in specific, B&B specific, unique to you, it's a signature recipe, then it's definitely worth investigating that. They don't always approve all rich pins, and as they say in here somewhere, I hope, it does take a few weeks for them to actually approve it. Yeah, it does say down here, we'll email you within a couple of weeks to let you know if it was approved. And those are for all rich pins in general. Now, when you log on to Pinterest for the first time, what you're going to do is you're basically going to see a big blank space with boxes on it. And if you click on one of the boxes, this board is going to pop up that says create a board. And you can name it anything you want, and you can also go back in anytime you want and change the name too. And then add a description, and this is super, super important in terms of descriptions, because when people are searching for specific things in Pinterest, which happens all the time, then anything that's in here, both in the title name and in the description, is what's going to be picked up in the subject search. Now, what kind of board is this? There's a bunch of different categories in here: food and beverage, area attractions, do-it-yourself, and you may not necessarily find something specifically that's appropriate to whatever you're pinning, but you can usually find something that's close enough. Now, you also have the option of adding a map board. Most boards that you're going to create, you're going to have this set as no. I can go in for half an hour and talk about the map boards, but I'm just going to touch on that very briefly because they're kind of a pain in the neck. And the reason being, you can't necessarily add things to a map board if they're not listed on Foursquare. So a map board would kind of be like Google Maps with a bunch of pins on it, integrated into Pinterest, but it's not tied into Google Maps, it's actually tied into Foursquare. And say you wanted to add an area attraction to your map board and it wasn't listed on Foursquare at all, you can't add that until you go over to Foursquare, create an account if you haven't had one already, add the area attraction, wait for 20 minutes, and then log back over to your Pinterest account, at which point it usually shows up and you should be able to add it. It realistically is more trouble than it's worth. And I haven't really seen a lot of interaction on map boards, and I haven't seen a lot of, more importantly, a lot of repins from map boards. So creating regular standard boards is suggested. You can switch it back and forth, but it changes the layout of it, and it creates a little bit of an odd look. Now, secret boards are something that are also an option. Say you had someone getting married in the family and you're using your Pinterest board as a combination of personal and private. like my sister got married a couple of years ago, and I created a secret board for her wish list things from Pinterest items. Now, why would an innkeeper want to keep a board secret? Well, maybe they're pinning interesting recipes that they want to try and they're unique. You know, maybe they're pinning things because they want to redecorate the inn and they don't necessarily want anybody else to see it. You know, there aren't a huge amount of reasons to create secret boards, but there is that option to do that. And you can switch it back and forth. Collaborators are also something that they rolled out a couple of years ago. It wasn't an option originally. So if you're a association, for example, you could have people also contribute to a main board or a main account. Now, this is an example of what I was talking about of the Pinterest button. So if I went to lakesunapeliving.com and I wanted to pin one of these images, I would just go up to this, and what it would do, it would be pull in all of the images from here that I would see, or that you would see on the page. And from that, from that, I can select this one, for example, and then it will pin that to a certain board that I specify. Now, you want to be cognizant of the fact that when you're creating a Pinterest board, and again, it can be a combination of things. You can use it for personal and professional reasons, but what I would recommend is if you were using your Pinterest board to promote your inn specifically, if you have multiple email addresses, I would separate them, sign it up specifically for the business account, and use it just for promotional purposes, you know, because you can get the two intermelded, but you might have interests, you might have books, you might have hobbies. They're not necessarily things that are going to integrate well with marketing your inn specifically on Pinterest. Now, one of the things to be cognizant of is when you're putting photos up, whether you're pinning them from your website or you're uploading them yourself, all of those are driven to specific links online. So the general thing that most people do is they put, when they're uploading photos, they'll put a link directly to, in this case, like blairhouse.com as the default. But you want to make sure that if you're using this for specific purposes, cooking classes, for example, these would go, in this particular case, they're going to their link on their website that's specifically about the cooking school. And that's important because people honestly are lazy and they don't like to search for things. This, for example, goes to their blog, and be cognizant of the fact that if you have a blog and you utilize it and you add photos to every post, which I highly recommend, make sure that you pin those photos from your blog post to Pinterest. You don't have to do it right away, but make sure that you do it because it is quite important for traffic. You can think out of the box a little bit and send it over to TripAdvisor if you'd like. You know, the links can go anywhere, but be cognizant of the facts when you're linking to things specifically, and you can change the links at any time, that you want to make it the most bang for your link buck, so to speak. Okay, now here's some example of what some bed and breakfasts have done specifically to just promote their inn. So these are breakfasts, these are their gardens, and this is kind of a mix of things. These are some ideas that they have. From a marketing perspective, you have to think of, well, tea parties. Do they offer tea parties? Because if they do, when you click into that particular board, it should say up here in the description, hey, check out our tea parties at the Crosby House. And they've done this with breakfast, they've done this with the bedrooms, but have they done this with tea parties, or is this just an idea for tea parties? So be cognizant of the viewers and of the things that you're pinning to your Pinterest board. Are they going to be of interest to viewers, and are they going to be informational about your inn? Now, this is Caldwell House, for example, and he's got some great ideas in terms of, you know, recipes, area restaurants, picture of the day, and his pictures of the day are from area photographers, many of whom he's talked to, that people can get an idea of where his B&B is in the upper Hudson Valley, I believe. You know, he's got his beds, he's got a staff, things to do in Hudson Valley, breakfast pictures and ideas. So you really can be really creative in terms of what you put on here. For example, here's another one that's promoting the inn. Here's a good one, my B&B awards, for example. You know, things to do, music, recipes, breakfast, you know, more tourism ideas, because those will all technically end up driving traffic to your website and to your blog and your other social media accounts if you choose to link to them. This place is dog friendly. And what they did is very clever. They've got some dog boards in here. So, you know, they don't say that they're dog friendly on here, which would actually be an added bonus for them. But if you click into Five Gables Inn, you will see that they're dog friendly. And someone coming to this particular board for the first time will actually get that impression. Oh, they either have dogs, but as you can see from all the variety ones, there's more likelihood to see that, yes, this is a dog friendly B&B. Now, Lord Jeffrey Inn focuses on weddings, and as you can see, there's focus on wedding type things. If you do host weddings at your B&B, whether they're small ones or big ones, it is a good idea to have a couple of B&B boards specifically, and think a little bit out of the box in terms of what you should put in there. Because if you have, you know, primarily rustic style weddings, or, you know, a specific style of weddings, maybe you have winter weddings, for example, make sure that those boards that you're creating for them focuses on that specific thing. I have an inn I work with in New Hampshire, for example, that has a huge renovated barn that they've opened up to weddings, and they're concentrating on doing rustic wedding boards. And this has actually helped their marketing, because when they have a brand new bride call them for a quote, you know, they may not necessarily say, well, here's our price for this, you can check out our photos online. But by the way, if you're interested in barn weddings, they can send them to this particular Pinterest page or this particular board on their Pinterest account saying, you know, if you are going to come and have your wedding here, here are some ideas if you're just starting out looking for rustic wedding ideas. And they've done this a couple of times already, and both of the people that they sent those boards to for inspiration have actually booked with them. And both of them have commented that it's that specific special touch that got them to actually book the barn for them. Now think out of the box when you're pinning things. This is someone, my friend Karen Thorne over in the UK, and she loves to take pictures of, you know, local wildlife. So in Michigan, I know there's lots of birds, for example. You know, people do like to come and see what kind of local creatures are around you, and you may actually attract birders if you make specific boards for just birds, just as an example. You know, here's another dog-friendly inn that's taking pictures of some of the dogs that have come to visit their inn. You know, local food, for example. If you go out and you buy, you know, if you have some local farm markets or CSAs that you participate in, it's a great idea to actually take some pictures of your locally sourced food and then upload them to Pinterest as well. And specific adventures. So if you have specials you offer on your website, if you're promoting local things to do, add those things into your Pinterest boards. Because people are so visual, this is just one more way of, you know, advertising the area, because you can also send, people want to know, you know, what is there to do around your inn? So you could provide them with a Pinterest board that would also give them links to hot air ballooning, for example, ice climbing, you know, kayaking, for example, and then they can go right there and see all of the neat things to do all visually in one place. Now this is kind of unique as well, because they have the inn, and they did something which I thought was really interesting, because they're talking about their suppliers. This goes into the whole eat local kind of thing. And they also have a board for their staff, which I think is really interesting. The handouts that I sent earlier talks about Lloyd, and he has his own board for I think it says my unsavory past, which has some pictures of him growing up and a little bit of history about himself as the owner, which is just a really kind of a unique idea to stick on here. And that particular board actually has a lot of people following him. So it's just that link is on that handout. It's a great thing to go check out. And so here's a snapshot of that particular board, Meet the Staff. And I think this is cute too. But, our housekeeper, lovely leaders. And of course, this can change when you have staff, if you have staff. If they leave, you can always take the board down and add a new one. I mean, I know most B&Bs may not have staff, but you can also add things like, hey, meet the neighbors, meet some of our frequent visitors, for example. Another inn that I work with up in Massachusetts, they take pictures of frequent stayers and they post them on Pinterest with their permission, of course, and they love it. And they share those particular photos that have been uploaded to Pinterest on their Facebook pages. And then all of those people's friends see those photos, see where it's connected to. So you're also branding the inn in that essence as well. Now, if you have additional things, not just weddings, if you have business meetings, anything that is applicable and anything that's visual, make sure you have photos of it. If you have advertisements that you run, if you have a guest book, if you have people send you personal notes, for example, take pictures of them, scan them in. I know that there's a couple of inns out there that actually, anytime they have a great guest comment in a guest book, they take a photo of it and they upload it to Pinterest saying guest notes, which I think is really a creative way to do that, because then people can see it and it's a very personal thing. Now, Hotel Indigo, unfortunately, they took this. This is an old screenshot, but I saved this because it's a really unique idea about integrating things from different sources. Because some of these were photos of the Hotel Indigo from Twitter that people took, and they were monitoring Twitter for their name Hotel Indigo, and they were monitoring Instagram for Hotel Indigo. And what they did was they pinned those photos both from Twitter and from Instagram onto their Pinterest board. So this is kind of an interesting visual perspective and an interesting idea that I haven't seen anybody else do yet. And I think it would probably take some work. But if you wanted to get a little bit out of the box and integrate this into your marketing strategy, you might be able to, do it. And if you do, please let me know. I'd love to see how it turns out. Now, there's also a lot of bed and breakfast lovers on here. And this is a great way to target B&B lovers. You would be surprised if you type in bed and breakfast love into Pinterest, how many people you will find that are not B&B owners that love B&Bs. Now, this is important because if you find people like this, especially you might find maybe they've pinned rooms that look an awful lot like rooms that you personally have in your B&B, follow them. Like some of their photos, because what it'll do is it'll track back to your own account. So if you have, say this room looks a lot like your particular room in your B&B, you could like this and then you could post a comment on it that says, wow, that's really interesting. When you're in Rome, Nebraska, you can come check out our inn. We have a room that looks remarkably like this, just as an example, and that's going to track back to your own account. Now, some of our favorite recipes. Now, this is interesting, and this brings something up in that when you post photos, whether you're pinning them from your website, whether you're uploading them from your own desktop, or wherever else you're adding them, you can add them by mobile or by tablet. Reuse your photos. So if you have quiche, for example, which I guess is now technically a dirty word, I'll call it a egg tart. If you have egg tart on your menu, don't just upload that or don't just pin it once. put it in multiple places at multiple times. So you're going to upload your sun-dried tomato with roasted asparagus and Asiago and smoked Gouda cheese to your egg board, for example, on Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. at night. And then the following Sunday, you're going to upload it to your sun-dried tomato board. And then the following week, for example, you're going to upload it to your vegetarian specials board. And the reason being is you're hitting all of those times at different times because, as you can think of, just like Facebook, when people are viewing things that they're looking at, it's going to scroll through a lot of photos. And also it's going to hit different targets because somebody might not be interested in your egg board, but they might be interested in your vegetarian breakfast options and might just follow that particular area. So you're going to get more exposure for that. Now, copyright's important. Don't upload photos that don't belong to you. That's very, very, very important. Make sure you have permission. I would recommend don't upload photos unless you either took them or you had a professional photographer take them and had permission to do so. There are so many photos out there that you can repin and reshare. If you do upload something that's copyright protected, for example, you went on Google and you thought, wow, this is a great picture of Lake Sunapee region, I'm going to upload it to help promote the Lake Sunapee region, you're going to get in trouble for it. Pinterest will get a copyright removal notice, they'll pass it along to you, and they will remove it from your account. Now, if that happens once, they won't do anything, but if you're found guilty of over 3 violations of that, they may close your account down, and that's something to just be cognizant of. The other thing is, if you have something that's copyrighted and it was uploaded and removed by Pinterest and it was on a board, it's going to create a hole in your board. You might get a notification very occasionally from Pinterest saying you've pinned something that has been copyright protected. That's not a direct reflection of you. You're not going to get in trouble. It just means that someone else uploaded something from somewhere else that didn't belong to them, and they're tracking down all the places on Pinterest that it was, and they're removing it. So just if you get a notification of that, don't panic. You're not going to get in trouble. The person that originally did it will be. Now this is neat in terms of you can also search for pins that are originating on your website or blog. And I can send this around later on if people want to, or they can review this. But you're going to want to put in the HTTP pinterest.com/source and then / your URL here. So it would be source / like lake-to-lake.com, for example. Just make sure that you put in, or you don't put in the www and what goes before it. So this is an example of, I did a back search for anything originating from my blog, and I got a bunch of different hits back from this. Some of these have been repinned from other people. So, for example, I pinned these particular things, and then this particular post, which got a huge amount of traffic on Pinterest because it's a recipe, a lot of people repinned, and I can find where other people are pinning and then redirecting traffic to my blog specifically. That's very useful. Now, if you have a Facebook page, you can also integrate your Pinterest boards and your Pinterest account into a tab on Pinterest. My personal favorite application for doing this is one called Woobox. It's WOOBOX. It doesn't cost anything. And it also has a bunch of different options. You could do YouTube as well, but you can integrate your Pinterest boards, and it looks very, very nice. Now, in terms of where to find good photos, you can find good photos, but if you're looking for eye-appealing photos to pin to, say, boards that you want to ask guests, hey, should we try this at our inn, for example? Food Gawker is one of my favorites because the photos that go onto the site have to be very good and they have to look professional, even if they're not necessarily taken by professionals. So these have high quality images that you can repin onto interest boards for use. There is a mention in the handouts about Food Gawker as well. Now, one of the things to also be cognizant of is height of when you pin things. So this is the effective image height, and in those handouts, if you don't have a photo editor on your computer, there's some great free photo editors that you can add photos to, and you can create a stackable look. And this is important, especially both not just from a desktop viewpoint, but from a mobile viewpoint, in that you're taking up more vertical space, so that instead of just an image taking up a square or horizontal space, your whole image for your pin is going to pick up in length and draw more visual attention. I wouldn't necessarily recommend taking the time-consuming time to do all of your images like this, but if you have anything specific, especially like a signature recipe, for example, take some additional photos of it and stack it, because it will help visually get more eyes on the image and more repins. And also use some of these photo editors to do trackbacks. So don't just have the information about the photo in the text near your pins, but actually create it on the image itself. Because if this gets shared, for example, and a lot of Pinterest shares happen onto Facebook, onto Twitter, this will track back to your inn as well. Now, White Swan Inn, bed and breakfast, for example, and I just pulled this one out of the hat. I'm not sure whether they're attending or not. You do have this option of messaging people. This rolled out earlier this year. I have yet to talk to anybody that's actually been messaged. But there is that option, and it's not something that Pinterest has really promoted, because I can foresee it getting kind of spam worthy in terms of that if people abused it. But there is that option for whatever reason that you can message people through this. When you hit message someone, you're going to drag a pin in. And this is just something to be cognizant of. And if they got a message from me yesterday, they may have just received the pin first, and then you add a message, and then the message gets sent separately. So as soon as you drag in a pin, it gets shared with that person. And that's just something to be cognizant of. Now, here's some additional things that you can do with your Pinterest boards. All of these, as I mentioned, are from home base. And I would go in, and if you're using Pinterest for the first time, just go in here and poke around. You really can't break it. The only thing that you can do is delete the account, and like most social media applications, it will ask you, are you really sure that you want to do this? Why anybody would want to disable their Pinterest account, I'm not sure, but I'm sure there's a reason somewhere. But go in and make yourself comfortable with this. Pinterest doesn't change its back-end operating how it looks often. And I say that tongue-in-cheek because it just did that to me the other day. But it really hasn't changed that for literally, I would say, probably more than a year. This has been the first major change that I see, coincidentally, with Pinterest in just a short amount of time versus a long amount of time when it hasn't changed. Generally, they do let you know. Maybe something soon will be rolled out about that. Now, some of the other things you can do with Pinterest are you can add a Pinterest widget to your site. And what that does is it will pull in a particular board, for example, or it will pull in your whole account, so to speak. But if you have particular boards that you want to promote on your website or on your blog, if you have a recipes board, for example, that you wanted to promote, or an area activities board, you can add multiple widgets to different portions of your site, and it will help drive traffic both to Pinterest and from Pinterest back to your website. Now, this is also something to be cognizant of, is that quite a few people are using Pinterest on mobile. Let me see if I can find the statistics for that. Oh, Okay, 75% of Pinterest usage takes place on mobile devices. That's actually up quite a bit since last year when it was around 60%. Pinterest is one of those things that I think people go to view, not necessarily if they're at work looking on their mobile devices, but if they're sitting in a doctor's office, they're waiting online at the DMV, for example. A lot of people will go onto Pinterest, and I've actually seen this in person, and they'll just go and browse things. I haven't found any statistics whether you actually get more repins from mobile or you get more repins from desktop-based users, but I have seen a lot more scrolling going on in mobile and a lot more actually liking, commenting from people that are using desktop versions. So that's just something to keep in mind of, but there are a lot of users using mobile, just like there's a lot more people using what are looking at websites on mobile. And I bring this up specifically because if you're using Pinterest boards to advertise pages on your inn, specifically like rooms pages, you really need to make sure that your site is mobile friendly first, because if you're driving people from your Pinterest board, which they're looking at on mobile, to your website, and your website is not mobile friendly, they're not going to stay on there and look, and they probably won't go back again. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, some of the other things you can do on Pinterest is it's not just photos that you can pin and upload. You can pin YouTube videos and you can pin Vimeo videos. So you could create a whole interest board for things to do in the Lake Sunapee region and videos of boats and kayaks and swimmers and all the different lighthouses on Lake Sunapee that people have taken videos of, for example, just as a way to promote the area. And think of it one step further is, again, if you have people saying, hey, I'm coming to the Lake Sunapee area and I want to, help promote my area, you can send them this link to that board with all of the videos saying, hey, you really want to see what Lake Sunapee looks like in person, check out some of these videos that we've created a board out, and you can actually see it visually. That's such a good advertising draw, and you've helped not just promote your inn and the area, but also given the guest benefit at that point. Now, when you pin things, and I'm going to bring this up for a couple of reasons, it's going to ask you to pick a board. So if I'm pinning this video, for example, there's this little tab editor here. Make sure you put something in here that's descriptive, because if you're just pinning something, it will automatically draw any text in here of what it is. And in this particular case, the Lake Sunapee region of New Hampshire, YouTube, this is an okay description, but you can add additional things to it, and the descriptions that it automatically pulls in may not necessarily be as descriptive of what it is that you're pinning as what you would want it to be. Now this, for example, it'll give you a selection of the boards that you've already done, or you can type in, if I typed in BEE, it would automatically pull this one up. Or if you scroll down to the very bottom, it will ask you to create a new board. From what I understand, there is a limit of 380 boards that you can create, and I think it's like 280,000 images is the cap on how many images that you can get to that. I only know one person out of a lot of people that I've talked to on Pinterest that have reached that cap. So I really wouldn't worry about running out of space anytime soon on this. Now this will also give you the option of posting to Facebook and posting to Twitter. Now if you post to Facebook, it will only connect to your Facebook personal account. Pinterest did very briefly for about 2 months, a couple of years ago, integrate business pages into this, and then they took it away. I don't know why. Hopefully it will come back again, but just be cognizant of that fact. If you're posting to Facebook, it's not going to help your business specifically. If you have a Twitter account, though, I would recommend posting it to Twitter. But also to be cognizant of the fact that once you check this and you go on a pinning spree, your Twitter feed will get cluttered up with, I just pinned this to Pinterest, pinned to Pinterest, pinned to Pinterest. Every single post is going to be pinned this to Pinterest, followed by the link. And from the perspective of anybody following you on Twitter, that can get a little bit overwhelming. So be selective about this. I know I've made the mistake when I've occasionally been looking for something, going on a pinning spree, and then I'll get a little note from somebody saying, oh, you've been having fun on Pinterest again. And I said, huh? Oh, yes, look at my Twitter account. And then you can delete the tweets, but by then you've overwhelmed things. So be selective about this in terms of the posting to Twitter. It is great for marketing, but again, be cognizant of the fact that what other people are seeing. When you go on a pinning spree and you're only posting to Pinterest, don't worry about it. You can go absolutely nuts, and it's fine. Now, Applesauce Inn, for example, they also have some great ideas about specific things because they've added holidays, for example. So, Halloween into Applesauce Inn, Christmas at the Applesauce Inn, and also think about these facts that, they have 47 boards, 1,000.2 pins, that many likes, that many followers, and those are the amount of people that are following. Now, the average kind of follower to followee ratio on Pinterest, if you're not going to be hugely active, is around 200, and that's actually pretty good. And as I pointed out at the beginning, if you're using Pinterest, even if you stop for a while, you're still going to get residual search engine optimization, and you're still going to get people clicking on your images and following them through to the links, even if you've stopped using it. Now, some of the things that you can do to customize this is logged in, and I'll go back for example. When someone is, this is not my account, and as you can see, there's no add to board off to the left. This is what you'll see when you're logged in. It'll say create a board. Now, if I want to optimize this, and this is one of the most important things if you're really going to invest a bit of time in using Pinterest from a marketing perspective, is make sure these top level boards are the ones that you're primarily going to want to be driving traffic to. Because as you add more boards, those top boards are going to get pushed down. Now, in order to rearrange these, all you're going to do is click on it, and then you're going to drop and drag it. So I could make this switch place with that one, for example. Check back occasionally if you're going to start to use Pinterest and invest time in this, and look at it from the perspective of what boards are people going to see first above the fold when they come to your account, and that's super important. Now, this images as well. Now, this is something that they just changed fairly recently as well, just in the last couple of days. I think it's coinciding with the rollout of where to find everything, is you can send a board, you can make a widget, and you can move the pins. They've actually made this easier. It used to be when you wanted to move a pin to another board, it was a little bit more difficult to do that. Now, all you have to do is hit that, and then you can select specific ones, and then you can move them all en masse to another board, for example. Now, if you want to change the board cover, and again, sort of like moving your boards around, so this is eyes on the top, this is important because this is going to be the primary photo for each board. As you add more photos, that primary photo is going to get moved away. You want to look at it again from the perspective of people looking at your boards for the first time. What is your primary photo and focus going to be? So you might want to go in, occasionally edit that, and then hit this, which is cover and change, and it will let you scroll through all of the available photos that you have. Now, does anybody have questions? And if you do, please ask them to the right, or if people prefer that I can unmute them, either way. So actually, I'm going to unmute all of you guys if that's all right. So hi, everybody.
Hello.
All right.
Hi.
Hi. So did you guys have some questions for me? Did I either
Heather?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, what I was going to ask is I hope I either overwhelmed you or I hope I didn't bore you to death.
No, not at all. when I pulled up my page
Mhm.
during your presentation,
Yeah.
a lot of the things that you're seeing, I'm not seeing.
Okay.
Like, you know, some of the plus mark up to the left of the name and things like that.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if this isn't set up as a personal page as opposed to a business page.
Let me see if I can get online and we can go take a look.
There's no pins on it right now.
Okay. Do you mind if I look for it?
No,
Okay.
no, it's Cocoa Cottage.
Okay. All right.
And I was just kind of going through some of my things, and I didn't think I had 2 accounts, but I discovered that I actually have personal and what I thought was business, but the things that I had posted to it are not there.
Okay, well, there's 2 Cocoa Cottages. Let's see. So there's this one, and then
But the other one's in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, okay. I guess that's not you. All right. Okay, so you don't have anything filled out at all yet, and it's not, your website hasn't been verified.
Okay, because I thought I went in there and it's been a long time since I've been in here.
Okay.
And so, okay, but like I'm looking on your screen and where, you know, it has the little picture of you, and then it has the 41 and the plus sign.
Yeah.
Okay. Even when I'm signed into my account, I don't have the plus sign and I don't have the drop down. I don't have a lot of options of being able to change things here.
Well, it's a question for you. Do you see on my, let me see if I can find it. I'll go back. Because I know that in some social media platforms, it takes a couple of days for people the changes to roll out. So do you see this, for example, down here? Do you see this down at the bottom of your screen?
No.
Okay. It might be, I would try going into, do you see this at all? This up here?
Nope. No, all that is missing.
Okay. Huh.
It's odd because all that's missing and the things that I did have pinned out there are not there.
Do you want to maybe touch base with me at some point, and then we can see, because you really should be either seeing like that prior slide there, or you should be seeing this option. Even from the perspective of personal account, it just shouldn't have analytics and ad manager.
Right, right. What browser are you using?
This is
You're
Chrome.
In Chrome?
Yeah, I'm in Chrome.
Okay, I'm in Firefox, so.
Okay. Yeah, the view should be the same in all of them. I always try to test them in all of the browsers, because very occasionally things are different, but not for the internal workings much.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can touch base on it.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interesting to know, because I mean, if people are seeing different things for personal accounts, I mean, I have a personal account too that I can log in as, but it looked the same as mine. So.
Okay, I'll play around with it a little bit more, and then maybe we can email back and forth or call or something.
Okay, that's great. Does anybody have any more questions? Since I'm on Pinterest, if anybody wants me to take a look at their account or has some specific things that they'd like to look at, please let me know. And if they don't have audio, again, if they want to ask questions off to the chat bar, please feel free to do so. I'm more than happy to answer anything that they have a question about. Hello, hello. I feel like was it Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Bueller.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Heather, this is.
Yeah.
Heather, hi, this is Marcy. I have a question about the stacked photos that you were. But again, tell me how you obtain that look.
Okay. So if you go in. That I went to, let me go to Pixlr, if it'll let me right now. I have a couple of photo editors that I use. Pixlr's one of my favorite ones, though. because you can just upload photos, for example. Let me see if it'll get to the one here. The link that I have will actually shortcut all of this and bring it right to the editor. But basically what you'll do is you'll open an image from your computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then in here, it'll give you an opportunity to add space around it. So you can upload some other photos and then copy them and then paste them above and below that photo. And then you can save a particular photo as kind of a group photo. I don't know if I have anything in here that I can use just as an example. All right. Okay, so image size changes the whole image, and in Pixlr, if I go into canvas size and then I hit, make sure you hit the middle, so this photo will stay in the middle, and then you hit height. So I'm going to change this to, if it will let me. Okay, and so what this has done, can you see over here, it's added white space above and below. So what I'll do is I'll open up another image, this one for example. And then I'll go to copy. And then paste. Oops. And I'm kind of cheating because it's kind of, I'm not being specific, but hopefully you can get the general idea. Is it'll basically just move those together and you can save those as a new file. Okay.
And then how are we getting those photos from where you're at on Pixlr over to Pinterest?
Okay, so I'm going to go into my board, for example. And so you'd save them to your desktop or save them to whatever photo that you wanted to.
Okay.
Okay, and then you're basically just going to make sure, so I'll go here, and you're going to see add a pin. Okay. And then, so you can pin from where you can upload from your device. So I'm going to choose, it's a lot like adding something to email, for example. It's like adding an attachment. I should have picked something a little bit smaller. Okay, so now once I've uploaded this, just make sure, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll add this to like a particular board that I want. Or again, I can create a new one. And then I could, again, post it to Twitter. And again, just to be cognizant of this, once you post it to Twitter, any additional things that you either pin or upload after that will automatically post to Twitter unless you uncheck that. And I bring that up because I've made that mistake. I think I mentioned quite a few times. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Okay. If you guys do have questions, if you run into things that you get stuck on that we didn't cover, please feel free to email me questions. I am more than happy to help. I don't charge for that. I always learn something new from people that have questions, especially about the presentations, because then I can add them into future ones as well. And sometimes I get some really interesting questions about, I found this photo, what can I do with it? What am I allowed to do with it that maybe we didn't cover? And sometimes I get questions that I don't know the answers to, and it helps me because then I can go out and find out and find the correct information to get to people. So please, if you think of things after the fact, please let me know. Okay?
Will do.
Okay. So Linda, I guess we're all set. I know we ran over time by about 7 minutes. That's not too bad. But again, I hope everybody enjoyed today, and if you're on Pinterest, come say hi. and let me know that you're on there so I can come and stalk you. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. I can come and check out your Pinterest boards. So I always like being able to see what ins are adding, because there's always some great new perspectives on things. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, please feel free to ask any questions. I do appreciate them. And thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate it as well.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.